All right. Well, my clock says 12:01, so I think that's a cue for us to be respectful of everybody's time and get started. So I want to officially welcome everybody to our Empowering Businesses to Make the Climate Transition webinar, which is co-hosted by the Business School Alumni Network Committee, or commonly referred to or abbreviated as BSAN. Also co-hosted by the Sustainable Business Advisory Council, which all of our panelists today are members of. Um, my name is Kyle Tons, and I'm a December 2023 MBA graduate from the CU Denver Business School, a proud graduate, that is. I'm also the co-vice chair of the BSAN Events Committee, who helps put on events like this. In case you weren't aware, the Business School Alumni Network is 27,000 plus strong of alumni throughout throughout the world, really. The BSAN committee plans events and programming for our alumni as well as current students, so be sure to check your email for all of our newsletters and upcoming opportunities to be involved, hear about our upcoming events, or visit our website linked in the chat. Before we get started, I'm sure at this point everybody's kind of aware of how to use the functions of Zoom, but a few housekeeping items. Please note that this webinar is being recorded, and if you have any tech difficulties, please use the chat function, and we will be happy to assist you when we can. For questions to our panel, please use the little tiny button that says Q&A down at the bottom of your screen there, and we will get to as many as we can. An hour is pretty short, so we will do our best. And we're thrilled to be welcoming two of our alumni as well as one current student, soon to be alumni, to the panel today. Thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise with us today. Our moderator for the program is Professor Robert Hobbins. Dr. Hobbins serves as the Assistant Teaching Professor of Sustainability at the CU Denver Business School, where his teaching and research seeks to solve today's water scarcity and climate challenges through private sector innovation in technologies, business practices, stewardship, and partnerships. Dr. Hobbins is also the director of the Business School Sustainability Programs, including the new Masters in Sustainable Business. Dr. Hobbins is also the founder of Climate Water Nexus Solutions. CWN Solutions works to find innovative business solutions that simultaneously advance both climate and water sustainability goals, being mindful of the trade-offs between them. Thanks for leading this discussion today, Dr. Hobbins. I will pass it off to you.
Thanks so much, Kyle, and welcome everyone to today's event. We've been looking forward to this with great anticipation and excited to be here moderating the event today, along with my distinguished panelists, which I'd like to take a moment to introduce quickly. And then they will tell us a bit more about themselves and the relationship with climate resilience and mitigation in the context of business. So yeah, this is a really important topic. We brought this to our Sustainable Business Advisory Council after being invited by the Business Alumni Network to put on a panel about sustainability. And we talked about, what types of topics would be exciting and relevant and engaging to discuss. And we thought that focusing on, decarbonization, climate solutions would be a very salient and timely discussion. So a couple of our advisory council members came forward and offered their support in putting on this event. First and foremost, Jennifer Leich. Jennifer is, as you heard, an alumni of our MBA program, one of our first graduates with a specialization in sustainability. Jennifer has been a close colleague of ours. She also teaches our accounting and finance for sustainability in our new MS in sustainable business and accounting programs. And Jennifer also does the Leich Endowed Scholarship for Sustainability. So we're very pleased for her support in supporting our future graduates in sustainability in our program. So yeah, Jennifer, would you like to say a few more words about your background as Manager Director at EY?
Yeah, thanks so much, Robert, and thank you, everyone. I really am excited to be here and great to see some familiar names on the attendee list. And for those of you I don't know, I hope you find this conversation interesting. And again, I'm Jennifer Leich. My day job is as the Managing Director of Climate Change and Sustainability Services at EY, Ernst & Young. I've been at EY about 2.5 years, and I support our clients with sustainability strategy, which can be anything from understanding what sustainability means to the organization, digging deeper into climate-related issues, including climate risk and greenhouse gas accounting, and increasingly support with voluntary and mandatory reporting requirements as it relates to sustainability. I've been doing this work, like I said, at EY for a couple of years, but I did this work internally at a couple of different global corporations. And I transitioned into sustainability, as Robert said, because I took a sustainability class in the business school when I was doing my MBA at CU Denver. So I definitely owe my career to CU Denver, and I'm so pleased to be able to support in so many ways.
Thanks, Jennifer. Next, we have Clint Huey. I had the pleasure to meet Clint about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. Took my global climate change course, and he and I worked together with Snooze AM Eatery, where he serves as Director of Impact to do some carbon emissions accounting as part of that course as well. We got to know each other pretty well, have had a lot of side conversations about sustainability, and especially in the food and beverage sector, and very pleased to have him on our advisory council as our graduate student representative, but very soon to be a graduate of the MBA program. So yeah, Clint, would you like to say a few more words?
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Robert. It's been a pleasure being a colleague of yours as well, and I've thoroughly enjoyed all the courses at CU Denver, but yours was one of my favorites. Yeah, I've been the Director of Impact at Snooze Eatery for almost 3 years now. It's a really great opportunity, and I'm just honored to be here today. This is an important topic that is going to take a collective to make this transition, and I'm excited to share what wisdom I can with you all, and I'm also looking forward to learning from the other panelists as well.
Thank you so much, Clint. And last but not least, we have Matt Rush. So Matt is at Noresco, which is a federal contractor. And Matt does a lot of work around climate resilience, climate decarbonization, but his history extends much further beyond Noresco, which I'm sure he'll talk about in a moment, on finding especially solutions in the energy sector, on decarbonization and sustainability. And Matt is one of our longest serving members on our advisory council, and we're very pleased to have him as part of our team. So go ahead, Matt.
Well, thanks, Robert, and welcome everyone. It's such a great experience to be part of this committee, and this event is really something that'll help maybe stimulate some conversation with everyone out there in the audience, as well as help our team learn more. I've not always been what I would call a climate warrior. I started my career very technically as an engineer working in power plants. And what I learned there, though, is that we need to do better. Burning fossil fuels was the solution 30 years ago, and I think as the technology evolved around decarbonization, helping the world do more with less, I've really been excited to watch, as part of this committee on sustainability, to watch how we've learned from each other, how industry has changed, and how we've become more mature about our impact on the environment and on the world in sustainability. Noresco is a company that provides solutions not only to the government space, as Robert said, but we also have consulting in sustainability. We have a commercial industrial group that helps actual business owners, and I think that's relevant to this topic. We help business owners plan and address climate impacts. And I mentioned that, as being a technical person in my background, I've been very involved in construction. Part of what my company Noresco does, and what we've done over $5 billion worth of over the last 40 years, is we've actually helped change facilities. We've helped change infrastructure in a good way. And what I'll talk about today is a little bit about the federal government and how I'm specialized in the federal government space, and why I see that as a very important springboard for innovation, research, development, and demonstrating innovative, sustainability-focused, and climate mitigating technologies that are going to really help change the world. So obviously I'm passionate about it now, and I guess I am more of a climate warrior here at this latter chapter in my career. Thanks.
And I would also just like to make a little statement and thank Noresco and Matt for helping sponsor our scholarships for sustainable business students as well, especially this past year. So thank you, Matt. All right, so we are here to talk about empowering business to make the climate transition. So to set the stage, what does climate transition actually mean? You might have heard Larry from BlackRock talking about BlackRock Capital about a lot of talk about ESG. It's been polarized, so they pretty much shied away from talking about ESG. They talk about the climate transition. That's been a common phrase in the business community nowadays, because even though ESG may be popular or not, climate transition, everyone is working on that regardless of ESG terminology. So what does that actually mean? Well, many of you guys might be familiar with the Paris Agreement by the United Nations to try to limit global warming to not more than about 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of the century, ideally, or not more than 2 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. So the aspirational goal is 1.5 Celsius. And in order to achieve that, that means that we essentially need to decarbonize or take carbon out of our industry and economies by about 45% by the end of this decade, 2030, and then reaching net zero, which we'll talk about what that actually means by the mid-century, 2050. So it basically is requiring us to make the transition of our global economy away from carbon-intensive activities over these next several decades. So there are a couple other terms that we're going to discuss today and that you'll hear a lot when talking about the climate transition, especially in the business context. Carbon neutral, climate positive, net zero. I know, Matt, you work with these terms and help clients try to achieve net zero and other decarbonization strategies. Can you walk us through what each of these terms mean and some of the key differences between them?
Yeah, sure thing, Robert. Yeah, thanks for bringing that topic forward. Carbon neutral and net zero are very closely aligned. When we talk about, when we think of carbon neutrality, that really means that we're not releasing as much carbon into the atmosphere as we are. I'm sorry, there's a balance between the emissions of carbon and the amount of carbon being removed or sequestered. A good example of that is there's a technology that actually can remove carbon from the air. It's very much early stages of research and development. There's a demonstration project underway right now in Europe to try to scale up the ability to actually remove carbon from the atmosphere. So that's a mega trend. That's globally removing carbon from the atmosphere. When we're carbon neutral, we're talking about our business or ourselves as consumers, how we can find ways to reduce the amount of carbon we emit, as I mentioned in my intro, to try to do more with less. But it's also about finding ways to offset that. The offset can be done through things like buying shares in wind power. I know here locally in Colorado, we have Xcel Energy has a wind power credits program. A lot of utilities across the country have similar programs. It's ways to offset what you're using. So you do more with less. Try to conserve first, because that's actually most cost efficient, is to reduce your impact, become more efficient. And that applies to anything involving carbon, electricity, heating, water, etc. And then find ways that you as a person can act, or as a business can act, and invest carefully, because there is a premium when we actually buy things like credits, or when we actually build our own on-site resilience and sustainability focused renewables. There's a cost to that. So it's really about doing more with less, and then finding ways to invest in what would be carbon negative or carbon neutral technologies. So from my perspective, that's carbon neutrality. Net zero is also very much the same. It's about finding ways to offset the emissions that you're making. Again, an example would be in our homes, we might have a hot water heater that burns natural gas. Especially here in the Rocky Mountain region, that's most common. It's finding ways to offset that and to reduce the amount of that we combust, but then to find ways to offset that. And I think you also had one other, which is was it carbon positive or climate positive?
Yeah.
So that's a less common term, but that's really about going carbon negative, and so that's finding ways to actually be negative, and that's rare. And a lot of what's going on now, to be very clear to folks, from my perspective, my business, we actually install, implement, commission, and measure these technology solutions over a very long horizon, like 25 years. And many of these technologies that are actually carbon negative, or what we would call climate positive, those technologies are very much novel, in the sense that most of them are new technologies that are not yet commercial off-the-shelf technologies. You can't just buy them and they will run for 20, 25 years. So we're very much in a period where research and development investment is key to our future in getting to what would be climate positive. But there are a few instances where we see technologies applied, like direct air capture technology I mentioned. So, places like the project in Iceland, where they're doing carbon capture directly from the air, great stuff, excellent. In fact, Iceland is a model. They're essentially a net zero country because they're blessed with geothermal resource and blessed with a lot of hydropower. They don't have to burn a lot of carbon. However, from a carbon or climate positive approach, I think that we can all look at ways to achieve carbon dioxide mitigation by looking at those examples and finding ways that we can innovate. As those of us who are about the future and are going to be focusing our careers on sustainability, always need to be looking for that kind of moonshot technology solution. I hope that answered the questions, Robert.
Yeah, thank you so much, Matt. And I know there's a lot of controversy on offsets and like what offsets means. I know you're talking about offset is like some things you could do directly to reduce your emissions. Sometimes offsets could also be used in the context of like buying offsets, right? And
Yes, sir.
we'll do that to try to reach that, carbon negative, like Microsoft does. They purchase offsets to try to actually reduce their historical emissions over their entire life cycle of their company. Yeah. So thank you for that. So that's thinking, Matt, you work a lot with the government sector. Paris Agreement was, agreement between governments. We're here talking about business, right? And I know, Jennifer, you work a lot directly with businesses, especially some, big clients. So, what is it? Why is it important for businesses to get involved in this? Why now? What is the urgency for businesses to enter the fold regarding climate action?
Yeah, thanks, Robert. Well, hopefully people would recognize from the information you shared at the beginning, right, that the planet is warming and that we do need to transition away from carbon-intensive activities, sooner rather than later. But business, of course, is not always motivated by some of these types of things. And really, increasingly, the transition is a strategic business issue, right? The outcomes of what happens in the near and mid and long term will be tied to our business performance. And so we really need to think about how to integrate some practices into our business strategies, our core business strategies, to really support the climate transition. And so, how do we convince companies to do that? And a lot of times, what we do when we're talking to companies is understanding who are their stakeholders and which of their stakeholders care, right? Are they a company that sells things directly to consumers? Increasingly, surveys have shown that consumers are considering sustainability important when making a purchase. Are they a company that has challenges attracting and retaining top talent, right? We know that increasingly employees are thinking about a company's position on environmental issues as a factor when deciding, where to work. Of course, you think about companies who are looking to investors to own the organization, and investors again are increasingly placing importance on a company's climate risk, wanting to understand, does the company even understand what its climate risks are, and how is it making sure that it is working to mitigate those types of risks. So really, we're talking to leadership in an organization, understanding, do they care about consumers? Do they care about employees? Do they care about investors? And really kind of tying some of that messaging back to the stakeholders that leadership team cares about the most. Another stakeholder group that is increasingly important, however, are regulators. Regulators are currently issuing requirements for companies to disclose information about their climate-related risks, about their greenhouse gas emissions. There are regulations currently in place in the European Union, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. There were a couple of climate bills passed in the state of California. And here in the US more broadly, the Securities and Exchange Commission issued a ruling to require companies to disclose climate-related risks. So, you think about whichever stakeholder matter to an organization, increasingly all of those stakeholders are putting pressure on companies to do more now.
Thanks so much, Jennifer. So that's, thinking about some of the, larger companies and how they're approaching climate action, decarbonization. I know, Clint, you represent Snooze AM Eatery as a, mid to small size food and beverage company. How does Snooze and how do, small and mid-sized companies think about decarbonization when it's not necessarily incentivized through regulation?
Yeah, really great question, and thank you for bringing that up. I think first and foremost, it really just comes down to the fact that it's going to take a collective, right? For us to meet our goals as a planet, we need all businesses to be part of the equation. Small and mid-sized businesses roughly make up 50% of the economy, and so they're obviously a big piece of this puzzle and need to be thinking about how they can be part of the solution. In the food service industry specifically, they're typically energy intensive and very wasteful based on their per revenue for their type of businesses. So there's a lot of opportunity here for the food service industry to make some big gains from a business perspective and cost efficiency. But another really important aspect of it, pulling on what Jennifer was speaking to, was the term that we've been talking a lot about here, climate quitting. This is something that we're seeing a lot in the millennial and Gen Z cohorts, where they're really demanding that companies aren't just putting things on their website or putting out impact reports, but that they really are walking the walk and doing what they say they're going to do. And so I think this is a really big, important aspect to focus to create that internal collaboration and culture within the organization. I think that's a big part of it. And it does affect us. I mean, one of the things that we've been seeing, specifically in Houston, in our Texas restaurants, we've been seeing a drastic increase in restaurant closures due to extreme weather events that have happened over the past couple of years. And so it is directly impacting us as an organization, and we're needing to look to how do we adapt to that? How do we be resilient to these changes, because they are continuing to come down the line. You mentioned a little bit too about just kind of regulations, and I think a big thing is, at the current state, we're not being mandated to report and disclose our climate solutions, but we are starting to see our suppliers asking those questions, right? So they're looking for their Scope 3 data, and so it's really important for us to start thinking about that so we can be good partners for those suppliers. And the reality is these regulations and these caps will continue to go down, and more and more businesses will fall into that. And so if you are proactive in this approach, you're actually creating value for your business, specifically if you're looking for new rounds of investment, or if you are looking at an IPO or something along those lines down the future. This is a great way that you can create value for your organization, because investors are looking for this. And if you already have those systems in place, you're going to be ahead of the game when it comes to those next round of investments and just future regulations that might impact you later.
Thanks, Clint. So yeah, we've heard a bit from large business, from small, medium-sized business. Jumping back to the federal government, it's hard to talk about business without thinking about, the regulatory landscape, the interaction with government, partnerships with government, stewardship with government. So, why is the federal government feeling compelled to lead by example, and what are the implications of that for the private sector?
So yeah, I can obviously take that one, Robert. Working in the federal space as I do, and Noresco, having a great track record in providing solutions, what we've recognized is that the federal government, who owns the most building space in the United States? It's the federal government. They are the biggest landlord. And so that's one major factor. They just have a lot of inertia in their ability to, if they can by fiat or by policy, implement change or achieve change, that's excellent. What we deal with in the federal space, though, is the opportunity for the single owner, the President of the United States being the top executive, and also Congress support of change, is that what we can do is help demonstrate the deployment and the technology transfer of these decarbonization solutions in the federal space first. Now, the federal government in current times, we have Executive Order 14057, and that's really about decarbonizing the federal government. And the current administration in Washington has, back in 2021, put the word out to all agencies that they need to set some goals and mandates to help decarbonize over time and to reduce their energy intensity today by as much as 40%. That's a significant drop in how each federal building would utilize energy. It also promotes the use of electric vehicles. The electric vehicle fleet for the United States government will become all electrified by roughly 2050. So, some of these orders and actions, also the Congress and the President worked together to pass the Energy Policy Act of 2020. That also set some more decarbonization-oriented mandates. And so what happens is you've got a framework and some taxpayer funding, as well as performance contracting, which is where you use the actual energy savings, the utility savings, cost savings to fund improvements. That's a significant part of my business and Noresco's business. But to achieve those solutions, but really by having this large stock of buildings and the ability to offer government-focused programs to make change, it positions the federal government in a place where they can lead by example, because if a mandate to reduce carbon intensity, deploy technologies, everything from more advanced lighting, efficient lighting systems, to renewable energy systems, to something called grid interactive efficient buildings, which take into account energy reliability. Those sorts of solutions can really help us achieve a carbon-free outcome, and also identify and deploy and prove new technologies through the federal government space.
Thanks so much, Matt. You started talking a little bit about some of the different strategies that companies could use being pioneered by the government sector. So I'd like to open up to all of us, and talk about solutions, right? So what are the different solutions that we might employ and to reduce, eliminate, offset, current historic carbon emissions? So yeah, what are one or two most promising strategies for businesses in your opinion, based on case studies or success stories or research that you've seen that you'd like to share with us today? And yeah, you guys are welcome to field it as you wish. Whoever wants to jump in first.
Yeah, maybe I can jump in to start. I mean, something that's so basic that you think everybody is taken care of by now, but they haven't, are just kind of basic energy efficiency improvements. Like Matt was saying, right? Reduce the amount of energy you're using before you start to think about, potentially moving to renewable energy sources. But upgrading your insulation, your windows, your lighting, your heating, your cooling in your existing buildings is such a huge opportunity still for so many organizations. So I know it's not the most exciting or trendy thing, but energy efficiency really is such an important thing for companies to focus on first and reduce the amount of energy they're using. One other item I'll throw out, we've had a lot of clients be really interested in electric vehicles these days, companies that have a fleet of vehicles and looking to electrify their fleet of vehicles to stop using gasoline and diesel vehicles. Of course, people are always very concerned about the existing infrastructure for charging electric vehicles, but there's so much exciting work happening in this space, especially with some government incentives. And so that's something that really is also very top of mind for many of our clients.
Matt, Clint.
Yeah, I'd be happy to jump in here to kind of speak to some of the things we're kind of typically doing from a small and mid-sized business. But they mentioned, purchasing clean energy. We're currently working with a couple of consultants to look at virtual PPAs or virtual power purchase agreements. As a small company, this can be pretty challenging. And as a company that is decentralized, we have 70 restaurants across the country at the moment. It's not as easy for us to just put solar panels on the roof of our warehouse. And I imagine is the case for a lot of small businesses. We don't actually own the buildings that we operate in. And so because we have challenges working with landlords and things like that to source clean energy or put solar panels on our roof, we're looking at this solution here. And so basically, but with a company our size, we don't have a lot of scale or power or buying power. So we're working with some consultants now to build a conglomerate and a collection of businesses that we're going to come together to create the buying power that we need to purchase and invest in new renewable energy that we can then put into the grid as kind of an offset structure. In the food service industry, though, one of the best solutions that is often, in my opinion, not talked about is reducing food waste and composting. Roughly the greenhouse gases, about 26% of that comes from burning coal and the production of energy. But Project Drawdown, some of the studies that they've done, roughly 24% of greenhouse gases come from food waste along its supply chain. And so that's a really big number, very close to that of power. And so, especially in the food service industry, working to reduce that food waste and then composting, which is actually becoming part of the solution versus part of the problem with releasing methane in landfill, can really have a major impact. And that's one of the strategies that we do. It is very easy to implement at a lot of and it's at your fingertips. So those are some of our major strategies that we're currently working on now. And then the last thing I want to mention is packaging. Almost all businesses do have some form of packaging in their products, especially in the consumer goods space. And I think that's a really important way in which you can work with your suppliers to build strong partnerships. And I think it's a great way to market your business and create opportunity to educate consumers while also making a big impact.
And thanks, Matt. And yeah, I did provide the link to Project Drawdown. Happy you referenced them. And definitely, yeah, food waste, very important. We know land use change in general, extremely impactful for climate issues. And you know, as serving as a carbon sink, taking away that land use and using for other needs, you know, reduces our carbon sinks, natural carbon sinks. So yeah, good point. And Matt?
Yeah, if I could add briefly is, you know, about 10 years ago or so, maybe longer, I worked with the Colorado Energy Office. So helping, you know, cities, counties, municipalities across Colorado. And we had this mantra, and it was and this is when solar was becoming popular. First, PV was becoming very much in vogue around 2006 because of a lot of incentives. We said, you know, the rule of the day was, you know, it's like eat your meat and your veggies first before you can have dessert. It's really about reducing, as Jennifer said, really look at the less glamorous reduction of your energy impact first, and that'll help reduce the cost because you'll need smaller renewable energy or alternative energy source technologies. So that's the best way for the common people and small business and large business to approach sustainability from that energy impact standpoint, scope 1, scope 2 emissions. But, you know, so the future, though, is that we're going to be moving away from a carbon intensive heating and cooling and lighting future, right? Renewables will be used to power the future. And as we move away from fossil fuels, my parent company, Carrier Global Corporation, is involved in developing alternative technologies for heating and cooling, like heat pump technology, for example, and advanced air conditioning and cooling systems. You know, my company, Carrier, has a 1 gigaton objective to try to get our customers to the point that they've reduced their impact by 2030 of 1 gigaton. That's a big ask. And a lot of that's going to be done by first reducing the demand for things like heating and cooling, and be more efficient, be better insulated, and then achieve a more sustainable future that way. And then think about adding resilience, renewable energy on top of that, the green technologies. And so, you know, with that said, I think that, you know, we're positioned well with new technologies coming over the horizon, as I said earlier. But, you know, again, I think that these strategies can really help us achieve achieve success in a way that does not burden business too much with cost.
I just want to make a quick note that if anyone does have questions, if they could use the QA feature for their posting their questions, so we can track them there. I'd appreciate it versus the webinar chat. I am sharing a bunch of like links and things like that we've been talking about in that webinar chat. But yeah, if you can use the QA to repost any open questions there, we'd appreciate it. So one of in the registration form, we did ask participants if they had any questions before joining us. You know, one of the questions surrounded around, you know, the fact that many of us are not chief sustainability officers at our companies. We also want to know what we can do as individuals, either by ourselves at home or within our companies in non-sustainability specific roles to make a difference. So yeah, as an open question to whoever would like to take it, you know, what are some of the things that are the biggest ways to make an impact as an individual?
Yeah, maybe I can share a few ideas to start. I'm sure everyone has a lot of great ideas to share here. In terms of individual actions that people can take, I know this is election season. I would certainly encourage folks to register to vote and to vote for political candidates that align with your values. And if you care about climate action and sustainability, I certainly encourage you to consider voting for political candidates who align with your values. In terms of your personal financial situation, if you have any sort of investments, right? If you're investing in stocks or funds, for example, consider how your investments are aligned with, again, your values as it relates to your environmental, environmentalism. I think one huge way that individuals and companies can make a difference is by aligning their financial investments with organizations that are, doing the types of activities that are making advancements in these areas. So, investing in organizations that have the types of practices and or the types of products that you align with and prefer in terms of your values. In terms of maybe one other individual action, I know Clint talked a lot about the impact of food and food waste. I would certainly say, if you aren't already composting at home, certainly you can do that here in Denver. Of course, the city of Denver does offer composting. If you don't have it in your home, you can also subscribe to individual services. And I know that this might be a controversial one for some folks, but reducing meat consumption, animal proteins certainly contribute significantly to greenhouse gas emissions. I'm not a vegetarian, but I do choose to eat meat, no more than 2 or 3 times a week. Those are conscious choices that I personally make. And so those are things that individuals can maybe consider as actions they can take on their own. In terms of what you can do in your workplace, sometimes it's just generating awareness. Many organizations that haven't gone down this path, there are so many competing priorities right now that, advocating for sustainability initiatives within your workplace, starting a green team, getting your company to start to, manage its waste through recycling and composting, looking at what other companies are doing in your space and bringing some of those ideas into your company, into your leadership. Is also a great idea, in your leadership team to see that your peers are already taking action in this space, and you can also do things that are already meaningful in your particular industry. So those are a few different ideas, but I'm sure that Clint and Matt have many more.
If I'll take my piece, if you don't mind. Yeah, I think, it's about acting in the interest, think globally, act locally, but really it's about, choosing, for those of you who are choosing career paths, there's so much need in this space of sustainability and solving these technical and global challenges, that you should really think about how your career path and what companies and what industries you might be able to make a difference by being involved in. Speaking for my own company, Noresco, we've got 500 employees plus, and we see though that there's going to be a lot of turnover. It's a bit of a unicorn business providing these developed and designed and guaranteed solutions, and we need the future folks who are focused on sustainability. We need your talent and your interest and your passion to help our company grow, and that's just my company. There are a lot of industries that need, like, our group, we need finance people. We need loads of them. We need engineers, sure. But we also need marketing people. We need planners. We need IT professionals. We need folks that can develop community sustainability plans. And it's a big piece. So speaking to it from more or less, I guess, starting at the academic point and where you'll go with your career, look to companies, and many of them are not obvious, but look to companies that are part of the chain of solving this global challenge of 50 gigatons a year of carbon. And a lot of those may look like industrial companies on the outside. My company Carrier's a manufacturer, but they're a manufacturer in a space that is at the forefront of decarbonization. Noresco happens to be the general solutions arm of Carrier. And so I look at it that way from a career point. It's really important to look beyond what is maybe the most popular in the media, and to look at other ways that you can apply your career in a way that's going to make meaningful change. Thanks.
Let me just chime in on a couple quick things here. For one, is a famous quote that I love around the end that started the zero waste movement, but I think it's very relatable to sustainability. We don't need one person doing it perfectly. We need millions of people doing it imperfectly. So I think it's really about just doing what you can and doing your best and getting 1% better every day, because that collective piece does really start to add up and compound. And then lastly, you spoke about election season and things that are coming up. I just wanted to also call out that we're a very divided nation right now, and a very divided people. And I think that, to move forward, we have to come together. And so I just want to challenge everyone to sit across the table from people that may have different views and have conversations, be open-minded, be open-hearted, and just, we can't get through this unless we're all together. And so I think by working to come together, we can really make the movement that we need. So just, be kind, be gentle, and be resilient.
Thanks so much. I think that's a good last question to wrap up the moderated panel discussion on individual action. I'm going to turn it back over to Kyle to moderate the Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Thank you, Jennifer, Matt, Clint. Such an insightful couple of questions you've answered, and now we've taken some questions from the audience here. So I wanted to make sure we get some of those out into to you guys, the panelists, to be able to kind of share some of your thoughts. So I think the first one would be a good one from Tabitha. Tabitha says, what are renewable strategies you recommend for large commercial projects in urban areas? Not rooms for lots of solar, wind, and geo. Also, any experience with using earthen caverns as thermal batteries with microgrids for commercial buildings?
So that was a multi-part. Can I, maybe I'll take a first stab. Commercial, large commercial buildings that can achieve, resilience, sustainability, decarbonization. I mentioned this term, grid interactive efficient buildings. There's a white paper on the Rocky Mountain Institute's website. RMI is based in Boulder, and they help set the policy for how these high-rise commercial buildings can start to adapt to minimizing, certainly becoming more efficient, but also taking advantage of renewable energy as possible. You're right. A rooftop of a high-rise building is not going to have a meaningful amount of solar energy on that little rooftop, right? So, what you can do is, and I think it was Clint that mentioned earlier, possibly is the idea of virtual power plant, buying power through a community grid. The utility legal framework, which I won't get into, is becoming more flexible and open to that. Although your office building is in Midtown Manhattan, it's got a very small rooftop footprint. In the future, you will be able to buy energy from a solar installation that's maybe 20, 30, 40 miles away from the city. And that's the future. It's coming. My organization is working on strategies like that at this time. I think I answered most of the question there. And there was something about microgrids and cavern storage of energy. Those are all technologies that are very much in play. There's some research going on right now on things like storing compressed air in the ground, like a pump storage project. It's another way to achieve energy production in a way that can be more cost effective and less carbon impactful. And so I'd say those are all possible. The space that I work in is very government focused. Everything that we deploy is generally already had a proof of concept, is close to being commercial off the shelf. But again, this idea of investing heavily. Our society needs to invest heavily in research and development in all those areas. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Not sure if any of the panelists wanted to chime in on that, but I think we have another really rich question that a lot of the attendees would be interested in learning more about. And I know we briefly touched on it, but Emily Pope asks, in what ways do you see the job market changing as companies move to more sustainable practices? What jobs might get eliminated or reduced, and what positions may be created or become more common?
Yeah, I can maybe start with that and would love to hear others' perspectives as well. I think one of the areas that jobs are maybe reduced are, traditional fossil fuel extractive types of jobs, right? So as again, we're moving towards this low carbon economy that we're moving more towards renewable sources of power. So those types of roles would be reduced and eliminated at some point. Obviously, we need to pay attention to what happens to the people who are working in those jobs. We need to make sure that we're offering opportunities for reskilling and retraining so that people who are impacted by this transition to a low carbon economy will have the resources needed to be successful in their next career. So I think that's one area that is very top of mind for many organizations right now. We're talking about kind of all of these new technologies, right? We're talking about renewables, we're talking about battery storage, we're talking about all of these different things. So I think increase in jobs in all of these new renewable technology areas. And so as Matt was saying, certainly encourage people to explore some of these areas that are of interest to them. Many companies are also hiring more people in their accounting and finance departments to handle these sustainability related regulations. I talked about regulations a little bit earlier, but just an example in terms of what's happening here in the US, the Securities and Exchange Commission issued a climate-related disclosure rule that will require publicly traded companies to put information about their climate risk in their Form 10K, right, in their annual financial filing. It will require companies, if it's material to them, large companies, if it's material to them, to disclose their greenhouse gas emissions and get those emissions assured by an independent assurance provider, right? all of how many different jobs did we talk about there, right? Somebody that's going to, you know, perform those climate risk assessments, somebody that understands how to disclose that information in a financial filing, somebody who works at an accounting firm like mine, EY, for example, to provide the assurance of that ESG data, and just your traditional auditors who will be auditing portions of the financial filing that will now have climate related information. So a lot of just really interesting things that are happening in terms of new jobs that are being created. One final example here on the regulatory front, we've seen so many of our clients create a new position called ESG controller. That literally was unheard of like a year ago. All of a sudden, more than half of the Fortune 100 have somebody doing that type of job. They might not always call it an ESG controller, but someone in an organization that has responsibility for the environmental, social, and governance data that is then going to be disclosed in regulatory filings, like making sure that that data is accurate, that there are associated controls around that data, you know, making sure that it goes through some sort of independent assurance and managing that process. So having somebody in the organization that understands traditional and accounting and finance concepts, but also understands these environmental concepts and can make sure that the companies are complying with these emerging regulations.
Yeah, and you know, to carry on from, if I'll go next, if that's okay. Sorry to jump in there, Clint. Yeah, as to continue with what Jennifer said, you know, is in Colorado here regionally, we have impactors. You know, Craig in northern Colorado, Craig, that's a town that is a coal town, and even back when John Hickenlooper was governor and continued now with Governor Polis's administration, they're working hard across Colorado to look at those communities that are currently ramping down and will eventually be displaced. And those workers will need to seek alternative, you know, long-term seek alternative ways to make a living. The economies locally, of course, are what it's about. And I think what we're seeing, though, is the world's changing too, right? We can all work, many of us work virtually. I'm working out of a virtual office and have done so for a while. I think that technology is driving change. But just think, there are some pent-up demands in our society. Across the nation, our electric utility grid is at least 80 years deferred maintenance. It's behind, and it can't keep up with the growth in the future of renewables. So there'll be more development of wind and solar. There's even talk of bringing small modular reactors, a very different type of nuclear. But the grid will need to handle all that new energy and the decarbonization future. If we're going to move away from natural gas, for example, for heating, we'll have to build our grid out. So what I see is there'll be maybe even a lot of technical roles that'll move away from the traditional fossil businesses into the future of decarbonization, because there's already a need for those jobs that are unfilled. So I'm pretty excited about the future, but I don't see jobs being eliminated. I see jobs being changed. Thanks.
Yeah, to keep the discussion short, I've been trying to post my comments as chat. One of the things that I heard at the Green Biz Summit last February was how AI could be changing sustainability. So like, we know that a lot of jobs are in reporting right now, but you know, AI could be potentially shifting that a bit, where a lot of the reporting requirements, a lot of the time that people are spending on getting, you know, all the latest climate reporting frameworks and reporting to them can be done to some extent through AI, and focus more time on those sustainability professionals to focus on actually doing and implementing solutions rather than on just reporting. So there's hope there. And that's kind of where I kind of hearing the job market moving, is more on, you know, solutions and implementation, and a little bit less on all of the minutia and detail of the reporting that potentially AI could help serve.
Can I just add one comment about AI? Obviously, AI is here and it's only going to continue to grow. The energy resources needed in order to make AI happen are growing at a ridiculous rate. I'll post a link in the chat here about what's happening in terms of energy consumption as it relates to AI. And so there are certainly opportunities there, right? How do we, you know, help to reduce the energy load that AI is going to require in order to power our future?
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, and thank you for all the great questions. So we have time for a few more. This one caught the panelists' attention despite the fact that it was not in the Q&A function. It's in the chat function, Jonathan W. But Jonathan wants to know, would appreciate the panelists' perspective on the role of local government building performance policies in the decarbonization effort. Do these policies help by establishing targets, providing resources and incentives, creating mandates that require companies to strategically plan for the necessary investments? Do they hurt by forcing investments and costs onto building owners and businesses?
I can start with that and would love to hear others as well. But hey, Jonathan, glad to see you in the audience. I have many clients in the New York area who are dealing with Local Law 97. So if anyone is familiar with Local Law 97, it is a regulation in New York City that will require buildings to reduce the emissions associated with the operations of those buildings. So for many years now, different cities and states have started to require organizations to disclose how much energy their buildings are using. This is not just a disclosure mandate. This is a requirement to reduce the amount of emissions generated through the operations of your building. So I think that's what Jonathan's really getting at here. There are other similar types of regulations, Bordeaux and Boston, for example. So cities are starting to kind of get on this track and saying, hey, a huge amount of emissions associated, with operations in our city are associated with buildings. So we need buildings to start reducing their energy consumption and their greenhouse gas emissions. I will tell you that my clients in New York are very frustrated by many aspects of Local Law 97. I think the intent is very well intentioned, right? We definitely want to incentivize organizations to reduce, their greenhouse gas emissions. Some of the particular nuances of Local Law 97 are definitely very challenging. I might keep it a little bit high level here, but Jonathan, happy to have a chat offline as well. Maybe point you to some of the things that our clients are finding challenging as it's related to some of those regulations. So again, I think obviously very well intentioned, and we definitely need to provide hopefully some carrots as well as some sticks perhaps to get organizations to reduce their energy and emissions. But doing it in a way that considers all possible angles is something that I think getting the right stakeholders involved through the process, maybe I should say, because I think some of these regulations are developed, and then all of a sudden the built environment community comes out and says, wait, you didn't even think about these other things. And so having the right stakeholders involved in the conversation, I think is an important first step.
Clint, I'll take the next segment, and Jennifer, spot on. I agree. Noresco, my company, has a commercial industrial group that has been working to help building owners, landlords in New York City to do their best in a least cost manner to comply with Local Law 97. And it's certainly a challenge. And we see in the media, those who track that local media, that Local Law 97 has had its challenges, and there have been some complaints. But again, our focus as a company, Noresco, is to really help do it in a way that's going to be best value and help make it a measurable versus essentially do it in incremental ways that can comply with the law but not overburden taxpayers, especially because, as we know, since COVID, a lot of the commercial real estate stock has been suffering because folks aren't going back into the office, for example. I would love to hear Clint's perspective on that. But, this is kind of lighthearted, but back to when Colorado legalized marijuana, what did then Governor Hickenlooper say? He said, America, 49 other states, don't rush into this. Colorado's doing a grand experiment. We're trying to lead by example, learn from our challenges and learn from our due difference. But maybe that's what's happening, is that there are other communities across the United States that are using some fashion of a mandate for private sector commercial industrial facilities to comply with sustainability goals. And again, I think maybe there is a part of that we take a measured approach and not try to paint the rest of the United States to comply with that sort of a mandate until we learn and find ways to combine incentives. They might be utility DSM type incentives. There may be tax breaks. Those are yet to be fully framed out, in my observation. Clint, I don't know if you have a perspective from SNOOZ's view as a participant.
Yeah, actually, I was typing a few responses in the chat for some of the answers over there. Can you repeat, sorry, the specific question that y'all were addressing in that one? I'm happy to give my perspective. I'll kind of get some of the other smaller questions that are in the chat going.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, I did see there was one question that was talking about food resilience, if it would be okay to chime in on that a little bit, directed to me. So a couple of different things. And I think one, before Snooze, I spent 8 years working with an organic and fair trade produce distributor. So learned a lot about that. I think one of it's about education. I think it's working with grocery stores to find out ways and things that we can, there's a lot of food that gets thrown away that is perfectly healthy. So we personally work very closely with a lot of food banks in the area. But before it even gets there, I think
Well, Clint, I'm sure your answer was show-stopping, both literally and figuratively. I think you're frozen on my screen, so I'm going to assume you're frozen on other screens. So we basically have time for one more question, and I'm going to go ahead and try and combine kind of two questions, one from Lisa and one from Kevin, which I think are kind of related to one another. What challenges do you see in implementing sustainable strategies, specifically for smaller businesses, nonprofits, for example, where resources are limited, buy-in can be limited? So what challenges do you see in implementing sustainable strategies for smaller businesses, nonprofits, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I don't know if, Clint, I don't know if you heard the question.
so yeah, no, I dropped off. I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem. I'll take it first, and then maybe we can, Jennifer and Clint. So the challenge is, small business, obviously, it's a small business, having owned one for myself for a while, is you're always cash constrained. So it's affordability. So I think that looking to utility incentives across the country, a lot of the utility companies are starting to offer ways to turnkey and include financing in addressing some of these climate oriented solutions. And so looking to tax breaks, that would be the first starting point for a small business that might be, have lavish cash on hand to make an impact on the sustainable future. And I'll wrap there.
Yeah, great call out, and I agree. I mean, the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, had a lot of new things that kind of came out with that. So, but we're all really busy. We got a lot of stuff going on. A lot of times, it's often hard to do the research. And so we've actually partnered with an organization called NG Impact, and they have a great service where they actually have a team of individuals who will do that research for you, and they'll keep 25% of the savings. And so it's still a net positive for us, but we actually don't have to do any of the work at all. They're just handling that for us. And so it's about finding the right partners and just being clever about the solutions that are potentially available to you.
And for Matt, Robert, any last thoughts on that question as we are approaching our time here? And like most virtual meetings, we want to be respectful of everybody's time. And so, yeah, again, my name is Kyle Tons. I'm the Vice Chair of Events for the BSAN, or Business School Alumni Network. I appreciate everybody attending today. I want to thank our panelists, Dr. Robert Hobbins, Jennifer, Matt, Clint. You guys are so insightful and really appreciate your time and expertise and sharing that with all of our guests today. I know I learned quite a bit, so I can only assume that all of our guests did as well. If you have additional questions about the Masters in the Sustainable Business Program, you can certainly reach out to Dr. Robert Hobbins on this call here. There will be a survey, and the recording will be emailed out to everybody. And if you wanted to get in touch with any of the specific panelists, I would still reach out to Dr. Hobbins, and he can certainly get you in touch with those individuals. But other than that, we want to appreciate everybody's time for attending the Empowering Businesses to Make the Climate Transition webinar today. We look forward to staying in touch with everybody throughout the upcoming school year. I know it's summer now, but the school year will be here before we know it. So thank you again for your time today, and hope you have a great rest of the day. Thanks so much.
Thank you.